Okay, so in part 4, here is the movie in QuickTime. So the Y object is almost completely gone. The Z object shows itself and moves upwards, and then the 3D object shows itself coming down, comes straight to the camera, and everything starts appearing and getting bright and all that kind of good, cheery stuff. So we're going to go ahead and do the Z, and we're going to model the 3D and set up its materials, which is how it's going to look. So let's go ahead and start with the Z object. Okay, so back in Blender, I'm going to center my 3D cursor by pressing Shift-C. I'm then going to do Shift-A, and I'm going to go ahead and say Add Text. I'm going to zoom in on the text. I'm going to press Tab to enter edit mode, and I'm going to type in plus a positive Z. I'm going to go ahead and tab to get out. I'm going to come up here, and in the top right hand corner of the outliner view, this object is called text. I'm going to double click, and I'm going to call it positive Z so I know what it's called. I'm now going to come over here to the font picker, and I'm going to come down here, and right here where it says font, it says regular, and I'm going to go ahead and click. And because I'm doing this in the same session, I can go ahead and choose the same font. I think that if you guys do this in a new class, you will have to load up the exact same font again. So hopefully you don't have to deal with that, but if you do, it's not a big deal, but it's a couple extra steps. Okay, so I've loaded up the font. I'm going to go to the materials. I'm going to click on Add a New Material. I'm going to go ahead and click here to name my material, and I'm going to call this Z Mat. So Z Mat. Now again, here you have to think about what is your object going to be looking like, and is it going to be fading out over time? Do you want it to be shiny? Do you want it to be see-through? Kind of like the Y object. But the Z object does nothing except be blue. So I'm going to leave the right here where it says surface, I'm going to leave the shader as diffuse. That just gives me a nice solid color. And I'm going to go ahead and choose blue. Brighten it up a bit, and there it is. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand up the Z by doing RX90, left click, and there it is. Okay, so it is there, but I want it to be centered a little bit, so I'm just going to move this over on the Z, on the X-axis. I'm going to go ahead then and move it downward, so it's basically off camera. Whenever I bring in an actor, make an actor, I always start by making all my changes on frame 1, not 0, but on frame 1. I find that just helps a lot. Okay, so on frame 1, I want it to be off camera, and again, you can see here's off camera. So I'm going to press I to insert a keyframe. Think about what your actor is going to be doing. It's nothing but location changes, so I'll click on location, and there we go. Okay, so as I scrub through my timeline, the X comes by, the Y fades through, and let me move my 3D cursor, and as the Y is really kind of flipping away, that's when the Z starts to show itself. So right about here you can start to see the Y object is still there. So I'm going to go ahead and move the Z up into camera view a little bit. You can see it's starting to show on the camera, and I'm going to go ahead and keyframe that. So I, location, and then down here in the timeline I have to figure out how much time I want to give it to do its course of action. Okay, so again, as an animator, you should start to think about that, and think about it in units of 30. Remember, so it's 30 frames per second. So if you want to give it 2 seconds to do its action, that's 60 frames. So figure out what frame you're on. This is frame 126 for me. It might be different for you. So if I give this 2 seconds to do its upward action, that's 60 frames. So 126 plus 60 is going to put me up there around 186. So let's say I go to frame 186, and I'm going to go ahead and move the Z up, and it goes off camera. Now I need to insert a keyframe, I, location. Okay, so now I can go ahead and I can have it go here. So you see, here it is, sitting down here. It starts to show itself, and then it goes across, and there we go, it's gone. Now, if you come up here and you look in your dope sheet, first of all, up in the dope sheet, since we brought in the actor, you'll see that here it shows the actor, plus Z, and it's showing some of the technical information. We don't need this. So get in the habit of, when a new actor comes into the scene, click on the little triangle to collapse it. It's so much easier on the eyes. Okay, so I'm going to come over here to where the diamonds are. I'm going to press A because I don't want to accidentally do something to any of my keyframes. And you'll see on the top bar here, here's my Z. So it's 1, 2, and 3. And again, if you don't like the way something is happening, or the speed that it's happening at, you just select your keyframe, or keyframes, and you press G, and you move them. And by the way, yes, you can hold down the Shift key and a right mouse click, and you can select more than one keyframe. So I can now grab both of these and shift them left or right. So if I want this to go slower, right now this is 2 seconds here. I can press G, and I can make it happen anytime I want. Okay? I'm going to press Escape to get out of that, but you can also press Undo. I think it's okay right now, so I'm going to go ahead and move on because I want to keep this tutorial series moving here. The only other thing I'll tell you here is that when you're having a window display in cycles, rendered view, remember this is set up to rendered, it does ask more of your computer. So it's going to make your computer go slower. Any computer in the world will go slower. So if you press play, and I'll see what happens here. If you press play, you will see it happening, but it's playing in all 3 windows. So it's playing, and it's playing as fast as it possibly can. So it's an approximation of real time. It's not truly real time. If you want to see this play much faster, change this from rendered and go back down here to say material. And you'll see that if I play it here, now it's playing much, much, much faster. So you don't get to see any of the shading, you don't get to see anything fading out, but what you do get to see as an animator and director is proper timing. So now you want to get in the habit, down here in your camera view, flipping between material view for timing and rendered view for just how is it looking. So when you want to see how fast something is going or how slow something is going, or how fast something is flipping or doing whatever, change it to material view. Press play and your computer will go much faster. And then you can go ahead and make some decisions and make the changes up here in the dope sheet. Then when you want to see things like, is the Y object fading out in time? Because right now it looks like they're both in there. But watch this, as soon as I switch from material view to rendered view, this is what the camera will actually see. And you'll see that there's the change there. Okay, so I hope that helps. Go ahead and press Control S and save. And I think we're pretty good there. So to finish up this video chunk, I'm going to go ahead and model the, let's see, the next actor that comes in, I believe, is the 3D. Yep, so there's the 3D. So we'll model the 3D and we'll set up its textures. And there we go. So if you look at the 3D here, you'll notice that it's actually 3D. And you'll also notice that it has a little edge here. This is called a bevel. And a beveled edge is it's just a nice little edge that gives it that truly 3D look. It also, when the object is shiny, you'll notice that it picks up some of the lighting and the shine and the reflections and that little sparkle. And again, if you have animated lights like we do, it just is a nice little effect there. So all right, let's go ahead and look at how to model the 3D, and then the next part we'll actually animate it. Okay, so modeling the 3D. So now I want to do Shift C, get my 3D cursor at the bottom. I'm going to make sure I'm on frame 1. Again, always good practice. I'm going to do Shift A, and I'm going to, as you could expect, I'm going to go ahead and do text. I'm going to tab into edit mode, type in 3D, tab out of edit mode. I'm going to change the font. So I'm going to go back here to my font panel over here on the right. I'm going to come here to where it says font regular, and I'm going to choose the font that I like. Again, if you are doing this in another class session, you will probably have to navigate to the font folder. So, okay, let me zoom in on that object there. Okay, so now that this is it's a text object, let's go ahead and rename this. I want to rename this. So I'm going to come up here to the top right hand corner to my outliner view. It's called text. I'm going to double click. I'm just going to call it 3D. And let's see, down here, let's see, okay, so down here there's a category called geometry. So I'm on my font panel. I'm in the geometry. Let me close these here so you guys can just really see. So I'm in the geometry area here. And you're going to see a couple different little sliders here. You're going to see modification, you're going to see bevel. So under modification, you're going to see two sliders here, one called offset and one called extrude. If you go ahead and click in the extrude, and you go ahead and you start adding to this, I'm clicking on the right triangle here, and you'll see that it's actually doing what's called an extrusion, and that's giving it some thickness or some height here. If you don't want to click a million times on the triangle, you can just put your mouse pointer right in the middle, left click and hold, and you can drag your mouse left and right, and you can see it right here, just to get an idea of what you want. So if you look at my numbers over here, you don't need it to be too much. So, 0.1 something is probably good enough. So you can also be very precise, and you can click inside here, and you can type in something like 0.16 and hit return. And that, to me, looks pretty darn good. That looks all right. Okay, so I'm going to leave the extrusion at 0.16. And now I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so I can see the edges. And now I'm going to add in that bevel effect. So over here it says bevel. It says a depth of 0. I'm going to do a very small amount. So on this one, I'm actually going to use these little triangles here. And you can see, hopefully over here, you can see what's going on. You can see that it is actually adding in the bevel. And you have to be very careful. If you do a number too high, let's see if I can break this. If you do a number too high, it looks like it's baking, one of those cooking shows where it's baking over time. It's basically oozing and melting into itself. So if you do it too high, you can see that it's going into itself, and it's tearing and nasty things like that. So we don't want that. So you want your bevel depth to be usually pretty low. I'm going to say probably 0.001. That's actually too little. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with 0.008. But it depends on the font you also chose. Fancier fonts that are more like cursive and more decorative, you're going to have to choose a smaller bevel number because they're going to actually go into themselves and sort of start tearing and imploding. So just watch what happens and just be very careful there. Okay, so we're almost done. So let's go ahead and let's save. Okay, now if we watch the finished movie, sorry about that. If we watch the finished movie, we can see that it's glossy, it's shiny. It does have a color. It's got kind of what looks like a light blue color here, and it fades out over time. So it's got three things going on. It's got a diffuse color. It's got gloss, and which is a reflection. You can see the reflection of the lights there, and it fades out over time. So let's go ahead and set that up. Okay, so first of all, We could leave the 3D like this, however, and I don't want to get too technical here, but this little guy right here, which is called the origin, you notice that because it was text, this is where the cursor was placed. So it's placed in the bottom left-hand corner. Generally, you want your origin to be at the center, like right here. You want it at the center of your object. So, because what you need to know is that all of your actions on your object, grabbing a location, rotation, scaling, they all happen from this point here. And I'll go ahead and I'll try to show that to you. So for instance, if I was to hit scale, S, you'll see that it's scaling from that point. If I were to go ahead and rotate this on the x-axis, you'll see that it's rotating on that point. So all of the actions and movements and things like that happen from the origin. Okay, it's kind of like it's the root of the object. So what I would like to do as an animator is I would like to have the origin be at the center of the object. So that way it just operates better, and you sort of just have to trust me on that one. Okay, so just follow along. We need to make sure that the 3D is selected. We're going to, on the keyboard, we're going to press Option C, C as in convert. You're going to see a little convert to menu pops up, and you're going to choose the second one that says you want to make a mesh from all of these four things. So we want to make a mesh from text. You see that? And so on a Mac it's Option C, on a Windows computer it's Alt C. So I'm going to choose the second option, and there you go. You didn't see anything that happened, but just to prove it, if I go ahead and if I have the object selected and I press Tab, you'll see that it doesn't go into edit mode so I can get a blinking cursor and change the text. It's actually now a solid mesh. I can actually come in here and I can right click and I can select these vertices and I can do stuff to them. And you can see how complex it is right now. I'm going to press Tab to get out of that. Okay, so now how do I get this origin not in the bottom left hand corner? Again, because if I press S to scale, you'll see that it's scaling up from the bottom left hand corner. So here's how you do it. You need your toolbar over here on the left hand side. I made mine disappear. So if yours is gone, you can press T for toolbar. If yours is there, then yours all set. Make sure you have your object selected. Over here on the left hand side, you'll see a whole bunch of tabs. Please make sure that you actually have the very top tab selected. Okay. Now right here, if I zoom in on it, this tab says 2, but it's cut off. It actually will say tool or tools. I forget exactly what it is. So you want this top tab, and you're going to come down here and you're going to find this pop-up menu that says Set Origin. And so if you click on it, you have 4 different options. You want to choose the second one, Origin to Geometry. And when you do that, now the origin snaps right to the center of the geometry of the mesh. Okay, I'm going to close this toolbar by pressing T, and now you'll notice if I press S and scale, notice how it's scaling up from the center of the object, no longer from the bottom left hand corner. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save one more time. I'm going to go ahead and stand this object upright so it's facing the camera, so that's RX90. Okay, and by doing that, by rotating it up like that, I'm going to press N. When I press N, you'll notice that up here it says that on my rotation I have it rotated 90 degrees on the x-axis, which is fine. That's what I did. However, I would like Blender to now think that this is its natural position. This is its neutral position with no rotation on it. I want it to say 0, 0, 0, so it thinks that this position now has no rotation. And I'll explain why later, but it just makes things cleaner for animation. So I'm going to apply this rotation, and that is pressing Control A, and I'm going to say Apply, and I'm going to choose Rotation. And there you go. You'll now see up here it is now 0, 0, 0. Okay, I'll go ahead and press N to close that. And that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to move the 3D. I'm now looking in the camera view. I'm going to move the 3D so it's actually centered in camera, because that's basically where it's going to end up. Okay, so in the next video I'm going to show you how to set up the materials for the 3D object. So over here on the far right hand side, you can go ahead and click on the materials panel. So I'll see you there.